Hi, Win.
Hey, Isabel. Hey, I'm thinking one of us is going to have to start making creepy music at the beginning of our
Oh,
podcast
yeah,
until we
that's
get a song like the intro song to get everybody like
yeah,
attention.
yeah. We need an intro song. That's good. Maybe we can ask our listeners to record a few creepy sounds and send it to us.
Oh, yes.
All right.
There you
Well,
go. That's our challenge to you listeners. That's your first interaction if you haven't yet. Like, send us some creepy song sounds or something that we can actually put on the beginning of our podcast.
I love it. Like kind of like the X-File creepy.
I love the X-Files soundtrack.
Well, welcome everyone. This is episode 5. I can't
Yeah.
believe already. This is
And
awesome.
last time we talked about illusions, and basically if you hang out long enough and go through our things, although you could pick one here, pick episode 5, pick episode 20 next, jump
Yeah,
around, there's
yeah.
always going to be a fluidity between every episode. So the fluidity of what we're going to talk about today really, I would say, almost came to me based off illusions, but yet in a totally separate energy bubble.
Hmm.
And so sacred fire is the word of the day. And I want to know, Isabel, like, do you even have a connection to sacred fire? Like, what would that invoke in you?
Well, to be completely honest, when you sent me that word, I think it was last night, but I only read it this morning because
Okay.
for the listeners, I go to bed like at 9 p.m. Like I'm a really I'm an early bird, but I'm also an early go to bed.
Yeah.
And so when I read it this morning, my first reaction was I don't want to say fear. It was not that intense, but it was uncomfortable. And then
Ah,
and then after that, it was uncomfortable because I'm a very logic person and knowledge person, and sacred fire is something that I'm not extremely knowledgeable about. But then I got excited because I'm like, okay, this is really good. Like, because
ah,
I know that discomfort comes a lot of learning. So I'm actually
yeah.
in a different state right now. I'm excited, and I had
Okay.
some experience about what I think is sacred fire. So I'm really excited to chat with you around that because it's probably going to give me a lot of confirmation for me, and I'm sure for listeners too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So sacred fire is not a word that I think I've ever heard, or at least it didn't really present itself to me until about October
Okay.
of 2017.
Oh, really?
And it was like a few weeks before the very first festival that I went to. I was living in Sarasota, Florida.
Mhm.
I had early in my awakening in the 2011, 2012 timeframe, I was connected with lots of people with lots of things. And I remembered when I got to Sarasota, Florida, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember back in the day, I was connected with a couple people in Florida. I don't know if they were on the Gulf Coast, the Atlantic Coast, wherever, but I wonder if I can reconnect with them and find out some good stuff to do in Sarasota, because Sarasota is very elderly and super rich,
Okay.
super rich. Like everybody's driving a Lamborghini, like everybody drives Toyota everywhere else.
Yeah.
And it's very flat, it's very whitewashed, and I was like, man, there's got to be stuff out here. So I found these two ladies again, and wouldn't you know it, there they are, right in St. Petersburg, like 30 miles away from me.
Okay.
It was just a random wild hair thought that I had, and here that. So anyway, the one, Lisa, if you happen to be listening, Lisa, she said, here's all these festivals and different drum circles and things that you can get involved with. And I said, well, I want to go to a festival. I haven't been. I feel a little overwhelmed by the idea of going to one, but I think I'm ready. And she said, well, I'm selling tickets. I'm an authorized seller of tickets to this Zen Awakening festival. And it's not too far from where we live. It's right outside of Tampa, actually. It was about an hour away from Tampa. So I was like, oh, cool. So we arranged for me, like in a couple weeks after that discussion, for me to go meet with her in St. Petersburg to buy the ticket. And many firsts happened that day. We met at this place that's a kava bar. Kava it's a tea, and it grows like abundantly in like Fiji and some of these other South Pacific islands.
Okay.
And So we met at this, it's all like it was like a tiki bar sort of thing. It was all hippies in this place. But their beverage of choice is kava and kratom,
Okay.
which is a root more out of Indonesia. And so we sat down and we started drinking and she had not had kava before, and she's lived there, or she had it like maybe once or twice before. But it was also my first time, and they recommended a low dosage because it's so strong it can really like almost make you feel inebriated.
Really? Okay.
So we were drinking this, and we were talking about different things, just actually getting to know each other in person now after all these years of sort of being connected, sort of not. And then, like, as the kava really like set in, and we were both like, "Whoa!" Like, it's totally legal, but it makes you, if it's really strong, you might not feel like you can drive or anything like that.
Wow. Okay.
And so we were in that buzz, and all of a sudden she goes, so just out of blue, she goes, "Do you know what sacred fire is? Have you heard of sacred fire?" And I'm like, my mind jumped in and it was like, well, I mean, I've done a lot of, work with smoke and tobacco, and I blow smoke and it activates the hell out of people. And I work with fire. I've got a lot of fire energy, whatever. And she listened, but she goes, well, so sacred fire is a term. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, listeners, and especially Lisa, if you're listening, but I think she said that it came out of ancient India. The ancient Vedic texts talked about sacred fire.
That
It's
was
sort of an energy thing. Now, I totally forgot what she told me.
okay.
But since then, I've discovered in my journey that every time somebody says something random to me, it's because I'm about to start experiencing what it means.
Oh, interesting.
And so since then, I've done a few in-person and distance energy sessions with people, and a couple times I've like, holy fuck, that's the sacred fire. I could feel it. And it's really centered around the abdomen
Right.
and the
Like
lower
lower
back.
belly, lower
That's right.
belly. Yeah.
And the back, that whole area there.
Yeah.
So, you seem like you could have already probably guessed that. But when I feel it, either again at a distance or in person, it just makes my whole body go, okay, there is your creative center.
Interesting.
There it is. And it's interesting that it's located in the area that we would say is our sexual region, our
Creativity. Yeah.
creative blocked off area. And
Yeah.
there's a reason then that people don't know what sacred fire. There's so much more we can talk about. But what do you feel about that stuff so far?
It makes so much sense and it's funny that you experienced that in October, because I had similar experience, but for me, the way I experience like a shift like this is always very physical. So because I'm like, we were talking at the last episode, like you are more in the consciousness and I'm more in the human experience, the physical world. And I think that's probably why. But I absolutely felt the same. I've been physically bloated. Like I've been, and I remember when we connected and you were channeling information or not channeling, but you were connecting with information for me. You did talk about like the fire in me, and that's where it is for me, is like at that lower belly level. So I've been having this physical discomfort at that area starting in October. It went till like February, March, and just recently, actually, I think it was Monday, I was sitting at the counter eating and I thought, I don't have any belly issues. Like it's gone. It's completely gone.
Wow.
And for me, I'm like, okay, like this is great, because being bloated for 4 months is like the worst physical discomfort that you can go in. It's not painful, it's just uncomfortable. So for me, I lived it physically, and you know what unblocked it? It just popped in my head. It's the podcast. Does that make sense, that it's allowing my creative energy, like to come out, basically? Isn't it awesome? I just clicked.
And here, when you take that almost a step further, at the beginning of our podcast a little bit ago, you said that when you heard sacred fire, it made you uncomfortable.
Yeah, it did. It completely did.
And this ties into some of the other things we've talked about in our podcast, when the reason we are suffering, quote unquote suffering, is because we're suppressing our creative energy. Our creative energy center is in the tendon. It's in the lower abdomen, in our solar plexus. That's our
Right.
life purpose. Our life
Is it
purpose is to be creative.
solar plexus, or the sacral chakra, like the second
It's kind of
chakra
in between there.
in that area?
It's the lower chakras.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much the root, but really like,
Right.
the sacral solar plexus.
Yeah, that connection between. That's interesting. That's true. It did make me uncomfortable. And yeah, because I get uncomfortable. I'm such a person that wants to know everything.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
when I'm not knowledgeable about something, I get a little bit uncomfortable. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. So I would say then, if I could remember just enough of the gist of what Lisa was telling me, that sacred fire is essentially that energy.
Okay.
Now, there's a way that she said it that may have been almost aligned with what we're saying, or maybe just a little bit different. Because I remember at first thinking, well, isn't that just prana or chi or ki? But it was different. I remember there was a difference.
Okay.
So the difference is prana or chi or ki is just the energy that flows through our
It's
system
the life
and
energy.
around our system. It's the life energy.
Correct. Okay.
Sacred fire is our creative energy. That's our Shakti. That's our inner divine creative.
I like that.
Creative and destructive.
Yeah.
It's the dance. It's the dance of destroying what doesn't work to make room to create what we want.
Yes, that makes so much sense the way you present it to me, because I was wondering, like, what's the difference between, like, as I was about to say, what's the difference between the chi and that energy? And yeah, I can see the difference.
Actually, you might even say, you could, and again, everybody, it's always subject to interpretation. My feeling of it is that the chi or the ki would be more what we call the Shiva energy, the kind of the energy that's just like, it's just there.
The flow, yeah.
But it needs the Shakti energy, the divine feminine version of it, to come in and activate the fire.
Yeah, the spark.
Fire, yes, to create the whole destruction and creation cycle. And then when the appropriate amount of destruction is done, then the appropriate amount of creation can follow. And then when it's done, then in biblical, they would just say, then on the seventh day is the Sabbath. Then you just rest. You go back into a dormancy and allow what you just created to be, to extend itself and to be whatever it's going to be. Don't overwater it. Don't underwater it. Just now you've done all the work. Now let it be.
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting. So how, I think I'm not too familiar with yoga, but I think you might be more than me. There's a type of yoga that kind of activate that fire. Am I correct? Isn't there?
Well, it's funny you say that, because at the beginning I was thinking, what yoga could we talk about? It'd be what people call Kundalini yoga.
Kundalini. Okay.
Now they can also say, some people will say Hatha yoga, or some people will say, but in all yoga, really, if it's done the right way, can actually do that.
You can act. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, but Kundalini yoga would be the one that they're really actually trying to activate that, because the sacred fire. Now, Kundalini energy is also said to be stored in that same region.
Yes.
And then when it activates, then it doesn't stop. It starts to go through this process of going through the chakras and whatever. No, for me, Kundalini activated more in the heart than it did anywhere else. It's kind of gone up and down and all around. But basically, essentially what Kundalini yoga is trying to do is to activate that sacred fire. But to get you to the point of no return. Like once you're in it, once it activates, you can't even step back out of it. It's like those little glow lights, those little chem light glow sticks things. When you break them and then the light activates, now it's on. It's on until it totally burns out.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh. That's interesting. And it also makes me think, because you were talking about like it comes, I think, the Vedic book, or because in Ayurveda you have like the Pitta, which is the fire energy, and I'm wondering what's the connection with that too, because I have a lot of that energy in me, and often out of balance. And it always come in that belly area. It's always
Yeah,
physically felt there. So
yeah.
it's
And that's
interesting.
why you get triggered by me all the time, because I activate that area
Yeah.
in many people.
Yeah, exactly.
And for you, you're trying to suppress it, you
Yeah.
know, but you don't know necessarily that that's what you're doing. You
Right.
sort of do when you figure it out, but
Yeah.
but you're one of about 8 billion people doing that. That's what we've been trained to do in this world, is to
Yeah.
not let that true creative spark activate, so we can be our ultimate selves, and
Exactly.
to feel okay with it no matter what people react to us for having it activated.
Yeah, it's so true. Like since October, when I started feeling that discomfort, connecting with you and Allison also gave me a lot of information about it.
uh,
Allison actually confirmed that it was going to be temporary. So just to know that like
mm,
it wasn't what something I eat, it wasn't allergies, it wasn't a physical illness condition that was chronic, it was just
right,
temporary. It
right.
allowed me to really embrace it and explore it. And every time I would do meditation, which listeners don't know that of me, but meditation for me, it's like a 2-minute thing because I have I have difficulty
Ah,
meditating. I do
uh-huh.
meditate when I go to the gym, when I jog, when I like there's different
Mm,
like painting, like I do it differently. But to
yeah,
actually like stay still and like just observe what's going on is
yeah.
difficult for me. But since October, I was focusing on that discomfort and just
Mm,
like asking it, like, what are you trying to tell me?
mm,
What is this all about? What am I supposed to learn from it? And creativity always came out as a message, like it's your creativity. So I was like, okay, I have to be creative. So I
mm.
started painting, oil painting class, which I truly loved and
Oh,
enjoyed.
cool.
It was awesome. And then what did I do? Oh, I started kickboxing after that. I was trying
Oh,
to be like
awesome.
creative movements, right? In that
Yeah, yeah.
sense. But the podcast is like it's definitely my niche. Like I feel so excited about this and so
Mm,
happy. And in my head, like I know it's our 5th episode, but it feels like we've
yeah.
been doing that forever.
It does actually, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
So
true. You really hit a lot of things that I think, if you flushed it out, would
yeah.
lead people to understand the sacred fire in themselves. Now, yeah, so like through meditation is one mindful way to sit with it. Now, through meditation and going into a trance is where I started to feel it in myself a couple years ago when Tantra started coming to me.
Okay.
But I didn't know until the last couple months that I just assumed it was, okay, so with energy, you don't even have to have a definition, and it all overlaps and whatever. It's not like in the energy form, there's like categories of, okay, this is Tantra, this is Kundalini, this is Sacred Fire.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way,
Yeah.
but there are different ways that these different things act within our system that we could actually kind of maybe categorize them just a little bit. There's still overlap, but I always assumed it was just the Kundalini and Tantra. But now hearing Sacred Fire, I'm like, Sacred Fire to me takes it to a point of action, where Kundalini and Tantra are just energy moving, the way I
Oh.
would maybe describe it.
Yeah.
So Sacred Fire takes it to the point of what you're talking about, action,
Oh,
appropriate action to soothe the fire, but not to put it out, but to actually work with it so that you get
right.
the pacification of that fire going, okay, this is what we should be doing.
Basically expressing the energy that is in you, right?
Yeah.
Like getting it
Yeah.
communicated out almost.
Exactly. Which is again like, other than like using the Shiva and Shakti thing, like Shakti never incarnated. Shiva incarnated and became the father of the elephant,
Okay.
Ganesha, right? So, but most of the time, what all we know of them is just pure energy, right? So, but when Shiva maybe when Shakti takes bodies, she takes bodies like Durga or Kali, or
Okay.
these feminine energies. And Durga and Kali are very just power destructive, fiery.
Yeah.
And so so those are almost like Shakti saying, okay, it's time to come incarnate, to be into the physical world and create, to take this creative energy and actually do something with it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, and the reason why all these Hindu and Vedic deities run together and become one is because they're just multiple expressions of almost a singular energy field, whether it's destruction or
Hmm.
creation or reverence, like Hanuman, or it. But ultimately, they're all one energy, and so um, I think what I want to say is that just basically the sacred fire is what we were just talking about. It's maybe if you're a person who really does like Indian history and deities, just think that Shakti is taking the body and taking appropriate action. And that would
Totally.
be sacred fire doing what it wants to do.
Yeah, exactly. I
And
like
some
that.
people, go ahead.
Do you feel like, do you feel it is like what's happening in the world right now is like that type of energy that is um, showing itself up in us? Because I'm
Yeah.
thinking of like right now in Hawaii, like the volcanoes, like it's like
Mm.
that. It's almost like the earth sacred center that is like
Uh,
exploding. So do you think it's
uh,
all connected?
yeah, and I love that you're saying it that way because what happens in the spiritual community is we see those things and we say Mother Earth is so fucking mad at us because we're a bunch of
Uh,
shitheads. No, you're the shithead for saying that shit. Shut the fuck up. No,
oh,
it's just that. It's like
I've never seen it that way, but I know what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
people say that stuff
It's
all the
so
time, and it's
sad.
like,
People are
no.
losing their homes and like
Oh
you're
my
going
God,
through
there's a
suffering.
tsunami. We're like,
Yeah,
Mother Earth is so mad
because
at us. He's like, shut up.
yeah, because volcanoes. So if people don't know about volcanoes, so this is the most creative. Like if you look at Hawaii, it's probably the most fertile lands that I've ever
Mm,
seen, and it all comes from volcanic reaction. Like the earth
yeah,
is built on that, right? So for
yeah,
me it's like it's the creative energy that creates it all, like it feeds
exactly.
everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just you're saying it. You said it right at the beginning, like of your question. We're at a time now where the creative energy has nowhere else to go but to be used.
Come
And
out.
all
Yeah.
and we're all experiencing that, and everybody's trying to suppress it, including the people who are like, everything is so bad. No, it's not. Like you're adding to the suppression. Like, shut up, let me punch you in the head and make you like redirect you a little bit, because no, work with that energy. And if I punch you in the head, maybe it'll help you work with that energy a little bit more, because this is good, because this is what we're called for. This is why we're all having these awakenings now. It's just like pop 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 pop,
Yeah.
because that fire now that runs all through our universe as a
It's popping.
collective
Yeah.
comes down through us in human form,
Yeah.
and it's like you have the ability that no other animal has to actually create
Yes.
intentionally. And
Yes.
so use that, like work with it, take that fire and it's just spin your mentality so it's a positive. And
Yeah.
as soon as you do that, you have an answer for an outlet for you to do something with it.
And it's
That's why we
funny
have Trump as a president right now, because Trump is one of the biggest ways across the world to activate
all
so many
that.
people.
That's so
Nobody else could do
interesting.
that. Trump
Yeah.
is Trump is like a sacred fire master. And when people accept that and understand that and let that run through them,
Yeah.
that's when they can start to go, whoa, and they can feel that thing that you were talking about from October, where you're feeling like suppressed and bloated or
Oh
whatever,
yeah.
to
Yeah.
all of a sudden a release of like, now I got something to do with this energy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because I had this conversation with Austin, my husband, this morning. We were
Uh-huh.
driving downtown, and Portland is a very, I guess there's a lot of different type of people. Like it's a
Yeah.
very hipster type of town. We have a lot of breweries. We have a lot of diversity. We have universities. So there's a lot
You're
of
talking Portland, Maine.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes, Portland, Maine. And
Uh,
we were driving, and I said, it's interesting. I look at people and I feel like they're trying too hard to be different. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
they're trying so hard to be different. And I feel like it connects back to that creativity. Like my discomfort for 6 months is like the phase that a lot of people are in right now. They're trying so hard to be different because they have that sacred fire in them that it's telling them like you need to be creative, but yet we don't know how. So we'll copy someone by having full tattoo sleeves or a
Mm-hmm.
different style of
Mm-hmm.
clothing, or I'll look like this, and like all like it feels like sometimes some people, not everyone, like that
Mm-hmm.
have tattoo sleeves are, I see them as trying too hard. Like that's not
Trying
what
too
I'm
hard. Well,
saying. I
yeah.
just noticed that all of a sudden like everyone has a different style, and I just feel
Uh-huh.
like is that I just like when I'm around certain type of people, I can sense that they have this creativity in them. They don't know how to express it, so they'll
Yeah.
utilize someone else's creativity and
Yeah.
appropriate it and define
Yeah.
themselves
Yeah.
with that. So it's interesting because I'm looking and it's like they're in that discomfort of not knowing exactly how to express your creativity. And that's when I went
Yeah.
through until I reached this podcast, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is it. Like that I'm no longer bloated. Yay.
Hey, you're welcome, Isabel. I'm glad
Yeah,
I helped you
that's it.
relieve your
Thank
bloating.
you so much. That's funny.
Hey, I should put that on my webpage.
Yeah.
Uh, Melman the Sorcerer, bloating remover.
But I swear, I'm sure right now there's some listeners that are like, oh my goodness, is that why I felt so much discomfort in my lower belly? Because
Hmm.
I've come to learn that physical symptoms is all connected to our spiritual journey, for me
Hmm.
anyway, and for a
Hmm.
lot of people.
It's actually
Yeah.
across the board. It's just true. You don't have
Yeah.
to hold that back. It's true across the board.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so, right? It's just for
Yeah.
some people, like for me, I know this is the first way that I'm going to connect with my spirituality is through my physical body. But
Of
for some
course.
people, it's through their spiritual self, their mind, their like different ways. But yeah,
Yeah. Well,
so
this is a fun conversation. Because because I think that's the point, right? Is like what you keep coming back to with yourself, that when this podcast suddenly gave you what you were craving,
yes.
an outlet. If you think about it, we're all like a bird. We all have a particular song we're here to sing. And when we
Yeah,
let ourselves sing that song, instead of trying to make ourselves sing this, we shouldn't be a sparrow trying to sing the raven song,
exactly.
which is
Yeah,
what you were talking about with people.
exactly.
Like it's a way, it's mimicking, it's a
Yeah,
way to maybe engage your creative fires, but let it like catapult you more into your own, like
yeah.
start to take your own journey, because we all have a beautiful song that we're supposed to sing as individuals. And then when we learn how to sing that as individuals, then we can join a larger and larger and larger orchestra, and we have this harmonization because everybody's showing up playing their own instrument,
Exactly.
singing their own
Exactly.
voice.
Yeah, yeah, and it's their truth, right? It's
Right,
basically standing in your truth by
right,
doing that this way. And it's not right, or there's nothing wrong about copying
right.
other people,
I just
but
caught the funniness of that. You said there's nothing right or wrong, and I said right. I'm like, oh wait, that's so funny.
that is funny. That's ironic.
It was
But
on accident. It wasn't. I was like, oh my god, did I just do that?
that's too funny. It's like when people say yes, yeah, and they're saying
I
nodding
know,
no.
I know they're shaking their head no, or yeah.
But what is I guess when you're doing that, you have to come to a realization that no, I've tried it, this is not it, and just move
Hmm.
on, as opposed to force yourself. Like when I tried my
Yeah,
oil painting class, I loved it,
yeah,
but deep down I was like, no, this is not it. So I just moved on. I didn't force myself to continue it.
right.
So it's
And
that.
and in our last episode talking about illusions, like it's a Fibonacci. Like so now you just take, like I've gone to film school, I've gone to
Yeah,
fashion design school, I've gone
you
to massage
did.
therapy school, I've gone to academia school, for 36 months using all of my GI Bill benefits from being a veteran.
Yeah,
And some of it's been very structured and linear, and others have been just very supposedly creative.
yeah,
And and thus far, I've experienced a lot of what you're just talking about. Like, what am I going to do with all this? It doesn't feel like I can do with anything. But yet, from each one of those schoolings, I've taken at least a little bit with me. But what I
Yeah,
know is that the Fibonacci is going to keep going around, and at some point, I'm going to end up using all of those things.
absolutely, absolutely. Because
So
it
I
builds.
didn't want to force myself into film right away. I didn't want to force myself into fashion design right away. So I've got the tools now, but now like when the time is right, they're just going to flush themselves out and show me how
Yeah,
to use them.
exactly. You're so right about that. Like it's just it's like building itself up into becoming
Hmm.
something. So it's like building a house. Like the house is not just a foundation. It's not just
Yeah,
like you're building your different floors and your different
exactly.
components. So
Exactly. And we're not in the era anymore that our our like parents and grandparents were in with the Great Depression, where everybody just really had to huddle together
yeah,
in
yeah.
like hope for one job,
Mhm.
like and like lock into that and call it like your lifetime venture. We're not in that era
That
anymore. We're
changed
really
so
in
much.
the era, like Allison, my twin flames book, era of the true creator. We're in
Yeah.
that era. That's why we're all feeling these activations of like that sacred fire now. It's impossible to
Yes.
deny that it's a thing, you
Right.
know?
And this morning I was when I was telling you that I've been listening to this audio book about the Book of Mastery by Paul. Is it Selig?
Paul
Selig? Paul?
Selig, I think he said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
know the
love
name.
I only read the two chapters, but I super enjoyed it. And
Uh-huh.
in that, like it made me realize like I don't claim to be God. I claim that we are God and that
Yes.
we are the creators.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's in us, and the more we resist that, the more we live in fear, the more
Uh-huh.
we live in the suffering piece. So
Yes.
it's like right now it's like a perfect storm to
Yeah.
shift completely and move away from that.
The last couple of days, I've been going through the last few years of transcribed notes from all the channelings that I've done over the last few years.
Yeah,
And
I read some on your Instagram.
okay, right. And
Yeah,
right around that one was it was talking about the same what we're talking about now and what you just said. And it was like basically what's happening in the world now is more and more lights are flickering on. That's the awakening.
okay.
And I remember seeing this now that I read the notes. I remember seeing this. It almost looks like the Death Star in Star Wars after it had been exploded and not fully put back together or whatever. It almost looks like that. So parts of our Earth are flickering more and more light on, but other parts of it are actually still trying to stay anchored in the fear in the dark.
Yeah.
And there and that there's a lot of people who are like psychic and are like, oh, there's a war going on, and it's a galactic war. And that was addressed in this channeling. It was like, no, that's absurd. That's not actually occurring. What is occurring is that fear, the energy, is still trying to prevail.
Yes.
And non-fear is the awakening.
Yeah.
When the awakening is working correctly, it's breaking out of the fear. And so we almost have it almost looks like from this channeling, it almost looked like we have the potential of almost becoming two different earth systems, one where everybody
Mhm.
still wants to be stuck in fear and play that dramatic rollout, and the
Yes.
other where people awaken and go into the fifth dimension.
Right, exactly. And when you think about it, like it all comes down from your sacred fire. I feel it's all connected because
Yeah,
the sacred fire tells you that you're the creator. You can create whatever you want. In that
anything.
case, anything, right? Like you it's
Mm-hmm.
in you. And
Mm-hmm.
in that case, there's no point of being fearful because whatever comes at you, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
create something to
Yeah,
move on.
yeah. Ah, you just said it like you can't say it any better than what you just did.
It's like all from that. And once you believe that, and he talks about that in his book, the Book of Mastery, how like
Yeah.
once you shift your belief to
Mm-hmm.
think that the creator is outside of you, and
Mm-hmm.
then move shift that to believe that it's in you,
Mm-hmm.
there's no point of being fearful of anything. There's
And this would take me back to a couple months ago when you and I were having the dialogue about that documentary series on Netflix called Wild Wild Country, and it's
Oh
about
yeah.
Osho,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you were like, whoa, you were getting a little triggered, thinking I was the next Osho. Well, in a way, I am, but
Yeah.
in a way, when we all awaken to ourselves, we're all the next Osho,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it's just what you just said. Suddenly, there's no rules, there's no limitations,
No, we can
and
create.
nobody gets hurt. Even if people seemingly get hurt, there's nobody actually getting hurt. We're
Yeah.
and the when we stop ourselves because we think we're hurting somebody or ourselves, that's old Christianity putting the fucking thump on us, saying, you know, you're a sinner, you should be punished,
Right.
you should never be happy.
Exactly.
No, you
Yeah.
should be totally stoked on everything that you do.
Right.
Love everything that you do, even if you feel bloated for 6 months. Love it. No, truly, like, love it.
Yeah.
It's the only way
Embrace.
out of it. It's the only way out of it.
Exactly. It's so true. It's so true. To embrace that sacred fire can be very uncomfortable for a
Mhm.
long, well, it felt like a long time for me. I'm sure some people live it more long, but I almost feel like like you have to go through discomfort. Well, maybe not. I guess that's another, like, a belief that I have, that you have to go through discomfort, but you
Mm.
probably don't.
Mhm.
Um, but that discomfort brought to light another aspect of myself, and it took some
Mhm.
time for me to recognize what it meant, and
Mhm.
also to get in that flow, because
Mhm.
it took about, what, 6 months before we started the podcast, and in that beginning of discomfort. So
Mhm.
it's interesting.
Um, I think generationally, we're going to see that start to dissipate more and more when we stop trying to tell the younger generations that they got to live by the old rules.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Then they won't build up that goo, that of discomfort, that of blockage. They won't
Right.
do it as much anymore, and they're not really equipped to do so. So, and I'm sure that these generations are picking the right parents before they even come in, to
Yeah.
give them a cleaner entry into the world where they don't collect as much residue and suppression.
Right. Right.
Because when you
Exactly.
talk with them, they're like, fuck you, I know everything. Like,
Yeah.
I know what to do, you listen to me. The only thing I think, in that case, that we got to do is just like create room for them to do that, but still, like, let them recognize that honoring people is still important. So
Mhm.
saying I know what to do, get off me, is not very conducive.
Right.
Like, it's still like, hey, look, it's co-creative. Like, so
Yeah.
there's still rules that everybody has to learn, but incrementally, I think we're starting to reduce the amount of suffering within the body. And I think you're right. I think maybe in the next couple of generations, we won't have as many people having to have the suffering and
In
the
them.
pain,
Yeah. And it was not necessarily, well, it was discomfort. It was not to
discomfort.
the intensity of like pain or anything. But yeah, it is suffering in some ways at the lower intensity, I guess. But you brought
Yeah.
something up. You brought kids up. And I want to talk about this a little bit, because
Okay.
children are so creative. So do you
Mm-hmm.
feel, or do you sense that when we come on earth as a baby, like when we're born, the sacred fire is like in synergy already in our body? Because kids are like, I remember as a child, I was super creative.
Mm-hmm.
I had imaginary friends, but I know they were probably spirits or energy
Mm-hmm.
that I could perceive at that time. So do you, like, how do you see the connection between the sacred fire and kids?
Mm-hmm. Let's pause on that for a moment. I think the first thing that hit me is when you said, like, I remember being, yeah, I remember when I was 6, shutting it all off.
Right. We all, well, a lot of
Right,
people shut it off at
right,
a certain age.
right. And
Absolutely.
I only started to remember that at the beginning of this year, 2018, when I got to Asheville, and I started to go through that deep grieving cleansing process that we've talked about in a couple past episodes. And so, do I remember how much energy was running through me at that time? No.
No, not.
But what I'm learning now is to go back and be just like that. Really
Yeah.
erratic behavior. Like,
Yeah.
I'm all in with this play. Oh, totally forgot about it now because I'm all in with this play over here. Oh, forgot. And it's just like, it's becoming where my meditations are becoming less and less where they were everything to me up until this point.
Interesting.
And it's like, I meditate for 10 minutes. I feel like a kid in agony again because I'm not going anywhere, because my body is getting more out of play than it is out of the meditations. And for the last 3 years or so, my deep 2-hour trance meditations have been freaking amazing. I've experienced everything in energy that I think you really could through energy. But then I would cut, as soon as I would open my eyes and breathe with my eyes open, I could still feel it, but I wasn't connected to it the same way anymore.
Right.
Now I'm the living version of that, becoming more and more.
Yeah.
And so I would say that really what it is, yes, you're right. I would bet that at that young age, you're really equipped with it. And everybody's telling you to not do it. They're telling, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, do this instead.
Or
do
you're
this
too
instead.
old to play with this now. Like, let's move
exactly.
on. Change
Totally,
it.
always redirecting you from what you already inherently carry. So I would say the answer is yes. And the more truly childlike we become, the more into our sacred fire we'll become.
Yeah, that's interesting because it makes me think like I'm a counselor also, and I work with kids a few years back, and I also work at a hospital. So a lot of kids suffer from lower belly pain. Like I remember, like for me as a child, my mom used to always rub my belly. And it's like that discomfort, it goes back. So I'm wondering if like that's all connected to the sacred fire being resisted and being stopped by being expressed in the play and the fun and the what sometimes can be seen inappropriate from parents, right?
Right. And we got to eradicate all that from our past now, because truly to be our sacred fire, tying it into Kundalini, Shakti, Tantra, it's all very tantric.
Yeah.
And
well,
like I've said before, only about 20% of Tantra is sexual based. The rest is all about these energy things. But the point is that you can't separate the two. So Tantra is inherently sexual, and sexual done the right way opens our creative center, because sex is supposed to be as playful as anything else. It's supposed to be this playful expression of our creative energy where we're not giving away our life force, our chi, prana, but we're engaging in it with the partner or partners that we have at the time in co-creating. And so we're actually co-creating through this act a larger amount of energy, a larger energy ball to work with that's truly creative. And so that's why Tantra and Kaula, Kaula, when these things came into the earth thousands of years ago, that's what they were doing. Before we started to go into the separatism that we've been in since then, that's what they were doing, is they were working collectively in groups with creating more with that energy. But now we're in a day and age where we have technology, we have all these things. So now we're actually in a place to spread this energy again and to work with it a way that really like takes us to the next level as a collective.
Yeah, because the ultimate creation is life, and it comes through sexuality. Like it's fascinating how like it's like, well, for me it's the ultimate creation. A life.
Well, it is. Yeah, it's the most fragile piece of energy, really, in the physical form.
Yeah.
Because it comes in as like very fragile experience when we're, like completely us or any critter entering the physical realm. It's very you're fragile for quite some time.
Yeah. You're dependent completely of your environment in some ways. I'm sure like we manifest that, we create certain things, but still that's really fascinating. Like for me to understand like the connection with the childhood, but also how and I know I always say like our past doesn't define us, but it helps the mind and the understand the human experience that we had and what learn from it, and then see like which path are we taking and moving into. So for me to see how creative I was as a child, and I know exactly what moment it kind of like got blocked, and then trying to rediscover that now
Mm,
is not an easy
right.
journey.
And we chose it before we got to the body. We chose this path. We
Oh
knew
yeah. Yeah.
in our
The
energy form that
contract.
this is the path.
Yeah.
And the people that would be engaging in that path with us, teaching us our lessons that we
Yeah.
and getting us to the point where the point of awakening would come and we would
Right.
have to make decisions based off of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Mm.
Yeah. So Sacred Fire, I think we did a pretty good job with.
Yeah, this is really good. Um, I knew I would learn something from this, and I knew like I would comprehend and do a lot of connections. So for me, this is really helpful in the sense that, well, the insight that I got about the podcast, I didn't realize that it was the
uh,
expression of my sacred fire.
yeah, that's cool. Because yeah, you're definitely equipped to be doing this sort of thing, to really like expressing yourself vocally so people can hear you. Because
Yeah.
you have an ability to reach people with your voice and your life experiences
Yeah.
that is so unique to you, and the world is ready to hear it. So it makes sense that you're in that time now to be able to let your be the songbird and let your song out.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm really
Definitely.
grateful to be on the journey with you.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you so much. This is great. And I hope our listeners you'll realize like what's your sacred fire telling you.
Yeah,
And I know for me like what worked really well was to just talk to it. Like I was
yeah,
basically communicating with it like
yeah.
every day like, oh, you're still bloated, you're still there.
Mm,
But yet what am I trying to learn from this, and what am I trying to
yeah,
understand, and please show me the way, like
right.
bring it. And yeah, so
Well,
for me that worked.
it comes down to what you're saying, what you've kind of already talked about a lot. This in other podcasts is that your thoughts shape your reality. So if you're bloated and you say there's no end to that experience, you're right. If
Yeah.
you say I'm learning something from this, what is it? There's going to be an end to this. You're
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah,
you're right no matter what, and you're going to manifest that off of
exactly.
your decisions and your thoughts.
Exactly. And for me, like I did seek confirmation from some of the people in my spiritual community in order to define like, is it something I'm eating? Like, is it something that is actually blocking my energy
Mm-hmm,
because of the food itself? But
mm-hmm,
no, it was not that, not connected. So I think a lot of people like right now say they're gluten free, or they have uh, what is it, IBS, or they have this
mm-hmm.
or that, and maybe deep down it's because you're resisting the true expression of your creativity.
I mean, I know that's true, but asking for every person who's hearing this to ask themselves if that's true for
Yeah.
themselves
Yeah.
will open up some doors of possibilities that they didn't have until they asked themselves
Exactly.
that question.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this is a
Ah,
great conversation. I hope listeners
yes.
you got as much as I got out of this,
Ah,
if
me
not more.
too. Me too. It feels good like you. For me, it feels good to sing my song now and to sing it the way that I want to. And I'm really grateful that you are the kind of person where I can just really be who I am. I can use expletives and be fiery and things like
Right.
that, like because that is my song, and I've been trying to suppress that forever. And it's like it's not my time to do that anymore. It's time to
Right.
just sing with all the gifts that I've been given. I was a sailor, in the Navy. Like I've taken all these things and put it into one formula, and now I just get to play with it. And so I'm grateful
Exactly.
too for you, like with this podcast, because I know that people who are listening to us and hanging in there they hanging in there because they love how we communicate, because they know somewhere inside this is helping them, or they resonate in some way.
Yeah.
And I like
That's
that. I like that we can help other people find their personal resonance.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Absolutely. And talking about personal resonance,
Uh-huh.
I want to conclude on this. I want to
Okay.
remind our listeners to send
Uh,
us a song for a theme song for our
yeah.
podcast. So
Definitely.
That's the creative,
Please.
right? Like that goes right into the sacred fire. Like bring it out.
Absolutely. Yeah, Isabel and I, we're just beginning this journey. If you're listening to episode 5 right now, so us with our sacred fire and the amount of fire that we each have, like it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing in ways that I don't even know that we could even imagine. So
That's so true. Yeah.
yeah,
This is
fun.
great. Well, thank you for another very inspiring
Yeah,
podcast episode of Synergy.
definitely. You as well, Isabel, and thank you, listeners, and send us insights and song or music ideas and
Yeah.
whatever you got.
Great. Thank you, listeners, and we'll see you at our next episode. And again, remind you if you want to send us some words that you want us to have a conversation
Yes.
about, feel free to do so. We have our Facebook page called Synergy Our Journey, where you
Huh?
can post whatever you want, and we'll be happy to respond, reply, and receive
Yeah.
your feedback.
Also, our Instagram, Synergy Our Journey, so you can follow us and suggest things on either one or both.
Yeah, exactly.
And
All right.
share our podcast wide.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. All over the universe.
All over, splatter it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next
Okay.
time.
Bye.